Hey YouTube, it's me Spotty. Today we've got 5 simple tips that should help you improve your solving, especially if you're using the beginner's method. So before we start with things that you can actually implement to your solves, if you haven't already, I recommend that you do yourself a favor, spend a couple bucks, and buy a speed cube. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but the advantages are pretty clear I think, and there are $5 speed cubes that are actually really awesome, especially for the price. But with that said, what we're going to do now is break down a solve using beginner's method, and I'm going to try my best to point out 5 of what I think to be the most useful things that you should be looking out for in your own solves to hopefully improve your times and solving in general. Alrighty, so number 1. If you didn't know, before even starting a solve, officially, as in a competition, you'll have 15 seconds to inspect your puzzle. In this time, you're not allowed to do any moves or start your solve, but you definitely can have a look around and try to plan out as much of your solve as possible. Ideally, you'd be able to spot your whole cross and even some moves after, but that takes a lot of practice and a lot of people can't do that, myself included. What I really encourage you to do is make the most of this time. Try your best to spot all the pieces and plan out as many moves as you can manage. That way, as soon as you start the timer, you'll know exactly where to begin. Another thing that might help with this is using a timer designed especially for solving. If you're on a computer, then I'd recommend CS Timer. Just type that into your browser. And if you're using iOS or Android, there are heaps of apps that would help you do that as well. Just take a look around. So the next tip I have is pretty simple. Basically, if you're solving the cross on top, try and flip it around and solve your cross on the bottom instead. The reasoning behind this is that it'll help you avoid the double rotation after your first layer is done, and it's also a good habit to get into now because later on when you move to a different method, it'll really help you locate pieces and have a generally smoother solve. The third tip is kind of connected to the previous, in that if you successfully achieve the first, it should be easier to make use of this tip. All it is looking out for more efficient ways to solve certain things. Specifically, I'm referring to the corners and also the cross on the first layer, but this will apply way beyond beginner's method as well. Let me quickly show you 2 things that are really easy to improve on. The first tip is for this cross piece right here. This might seem like a pretty tricky case if you don't really know how to do it. Some people might move it to the bottom, then realize that, oh, it needs to be flipped, so then you do the flipping algorithm. Actually, it can be solved a lot faster. So let's say it's here. All you have to do is move your cross like so, move your cross piece down, and move it back. And that makes your whole cross, doesn't ruin anything else, and it also flips this piece when it's here. Obviously, this is a very specific case, but there are heaps of things that you could look out for, especially if you're still solving with a daisy method or similar to that. The second thing that is really easy to look out for is your corners. This is a perfect example of where doing your one algorithm would not really be the most efficient way to solve this. Instead, what you could do is do the reverse of your algorithm, which will put it in 4 moves rather than the 12 or 15 it might be moves that it takes to get that normally. So just little things like that which can help you solve things in less moves or more efficiently, maybe something easier to finger trick, which we'll get into later. Alrighty, so getting into the 4th tip, this is kind of crucial and it can and should be applied in every part of your solve. What I'm talking about is finger tricks. So if you don't know, finger tricks is a fancy, well, kind of fancy, term used to describe how to better turn the cube with your fingers rather than your whole wrists. The most basic finger tricks include R's, L's, U's, and D's with your ring finger. You can also do F's and B's, and these kind of require a regrip, but it's still a lot faster than doing whole move, whole wrist turns like that. Learning some really simple finger tricks can help the overall fluidity of your solve and algorithms, so try your best to work on this. And the 5th and final tip that I have for you guys is just to know your method and know it well. You should know your algorithms and the steps you have to take well enough that you don't really have to think too much about this throughout your solve. This will only come with practice, but definitely try your best to get familiar with exactly what you're doing. But yeah, those are the 5 tips that I've got for you. Hopefully you did find this useful. If you know anyone else who might find this useful, then feel free to share this around. I'd really appreciate if you did that. But other